Well, me and Paul we're familiar with each other because I had to take care of him when he was at Kansas as a freshman. So we knew each other. So there was mutual respect between Paul and I, and we became friends. And we, you know, whenever I would go to LA to work out in the off season and play in the summer league, before I was even with Boston, Paul would say, "I want Strick on my team." So we would play together, and so that's kind of how that familiarity. So when I got to Boston, it was just like a homecoming. It was a natural thing. That team was a phenomenal team. We surprised a lot of people. Everybody picked us to be at the bottom of the Eastern Conference that year, and for us to be in the top three of the Eastern Conference blew everybody's mind. So that was fun. Seeing a young Dirk, I knew Dirk was going to be who he is, and as a Hall of Famer, you could tell he just had a work ethic that preceded anybody that in the league. He worked his tail off. I mean, hours before, hours after. He was in there with his shooting guy, Holgar. They were all the crazy shots you were seeing in his later career. He was honing that stuff early in his career. He just wasn't physical yet. You just knew that once he understood the physicality part of the game, to which it was exploited when they lost to that Golden State team in the first round that year, where I think they won 50 plus games.
They did 2007,
and they were at the top, one of the top seeded teams. They really punked him, and he learned from that. He didn't. After that, Miami and all of them got the brunt of a Dirk that was like, "I'm not taking no more of this mess." So early on, you knew he was going to be great. He figured it out, and it was fun to watch him. It was good. A lot of people don't. This is one of the things that a lot of people don't know, and it's a claim to fame of mine. But when I was at Dallas, Steve was my backup. So
really,
now that's not to say I'm better than Steve, but yeah, he came off the bench, backed me up, and a lot of the reason they had to get rid of me, and I understand it's a business. What they didn't know is they could have had a conversation with me. I would have deferred. You know what I mean? That's the kind of guy I was. But that deal was sprung by little Donnie Nelson. Big Don, I was Big Don's guy. You know what I mean? So little Donnie kind of sprung that to where he wanted to get me out of the way, because Steve, I would have made it difficult for Steve to progress into Steve. Without me there, I'm a problem in practice for people. I was in your jock. You know what I mean? And it wouldn't have allowed Steve. I think Steve would have had look over the shoulder type pressure. Whereas without me there, he was able to play free. He was able didn't have to worry about, me or anybody or somebody coming off the bench for him if he made a mistake. And it allowed him to be able to make the things he was able to do as a player. So I understood why they did that, get me out of the way. And because the city also, favored me a little bit in that deal. So I get it, but I hated it because I can see we were going to win. I knew coming off 2002 that we were going to be close to a 50 win team. I knew it. And after you've given all your blood, sweat, and tears, and taken the beatings, that's the reward you want as a player. But I just wasn't able to attain it.
Yeah, you literally just missed it. And did you see the greatness in Steve Nash back then? Did you think this guy could be MVP one day? Because I don't think anybody would have seen that back then. But in practice, did you see any flashes?
I mean, yeah. I mean, he had great court vision. He had great footwork because he played soccer. So he had great footwork. His vision, his court presence, his leadership, all of that you could tell. It's just he played tight early on. You know what I mean? In the younger parts. And again, with a guy like me being physical and, hounding him the way, it made it tough. But you could tell he was going to be, I wouldn't say MVP-ish. You know what I mean? I think Dallas even missed that one. They didn't sign him and re-sign him. He goes over to Phoenix and does his thing. You know what I mean? He got with the style that made sense for him.
And I've had Stephen Hunter, who played center for that Phoenix team in 2005, and he was saying that team, Joe Johnson, the young team with Nash and Stoudemire and Marion, they were loaded. And he goes, Brad, we should have won the
Yeah.
championship that year. We were
Yeah.
they're beating people by 20 every game. And it was just,
Yeah.
so that was, it's a shame that he never got that championship. Him and that whole team, that Phoenix team was just loaded in that era. But the Spurs, you had Pop, and then you had, it just is. But then Kobe came along again with Gasol, and that was the end of that. But so I want to take it to the 0-2 Celtics real quick. And I had Kenny Anderson on the show, and Kenny talked about that team as well. And you guys had a lot of gritty guys. Rodney Rogers played in that team.
Yeah.
I love Rodney. I mean, a lot of gritty guys. Yeah. So, and of course, a young Antoine Walker, young Paul Pierce, Eric Williams, Tony Battier, was he on that team? Yeah, you had that's a lot of talented guys. I mean, it was a solid team. And I remember watching that game against the Nets. I was a senior in high school then, and me and my friends were watching it. We were probably partying. And I remember you guys came back. I think it was like a Sunday afternoon. You're down by like 20, and you guys came back in the fourth quarter. And I think to this day, 25. I think it's still the biggest comeback in fourth quarter history in the NBA and in the playoffs. It's incredible. Yeah. So what would you, at that point, take us through that particular game, what you remember of it, in that fourth quarter? Were you guys just, demoralized, or do you guys think we still have a shot at this? I mean, what was the mindset like going into that fourth quarter?
Well, for us, the way we played all year, it was never about a specific number or a lead. It was always a game within a game by quarter, no matter what the situation was. First quarter, we always said we want to win the first quarter. Then we knew it was a game of runs. We knew time runs would run out. So we knew defensively we had capabilities of getting stops. So we knew we could get back into games. So for us, it was a game within a game. It was by this time, cut the lead to this. By this time, cut the lead to that. If we can get it to this, under this, we can make it something. And then of course we got hot and ended up, Paul went nuts that game.
Yeah, he did.
It just ended up that way. I think the biggest problem I had with that series was we had not too long before that signed Tony Delk.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Tony Delk was Jim O'Brien's guy from Kentucky. So there's familiarity with that, right? But it threw off the makeup of what made us who we were, because although Tony was a prolific scorer and he could do a lot of different things and he could stretch the floor, he shot the ball really well. But defensively he could be a liability, at times. So then they tried to integrate him into the point guard position, which that's not really what he did. So, and what made him successful. So when Jim made the move to go with Tony Delk instead of me, the problem with that is we 3-1 New Jersey in the season the way we did it with me and coming off the bench behind Kenny, and it was that rotation, and I spell Paul and so forth and so on, right? And sometimes spell Eric. So sometimes it'll be me, Kenny, Paul, and so forth. And I may guard a 3 and Paul may guard a 2. So we had that kind of makeup. That's the versatility we had. But what happened was we went away from that. And in getting away from that, Jason Kidd goes nuts. And that's where, again, why we were successful against them, because I'm able to physically match up with Jason and not allow him to do the things that he did successfully, is post up and, push the ball in transition and do all of that stuff. Yeah.
And I never even thought about how you were teammates the years before, a couple years before that. And then of course you had Cal, or in Vegas, you played against him. So yeah, you would have known him very well, and that would have been the ideal matchup for you, as far as playing an opposing superstar, because you knew him so well and you knew how to guard him.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I never knew that backstory.
Yeah. That's the one thing, Brad, that kind of still irks me, because we should have beat them, no doubt.
And,
we're a better team.
When you look at that, because I think you had a young Richard Jefferson in that team and Kenyon Martin, those guys, they're all kind of coming up, Kerry Kittles. So, you guys talent-wise are right there pound for pound with them. And you probably have more veteran leadership with the guys you had with you and Rodney and some of the, Kenny Anderson and those guys. So, you know, I vividly remember watching that series, and I don't think anybody really knew who was going to come out on top, but I just remember the 25-point comeback. And then of course I remember the Nets going to the finals, and then LA, I don't know if anybody's going to be Kobe.
Yeah, smashing them. Yeah,
Kobe and Shaq, the way they were
Kobe
then.
Shaq team.
Yeah, that was just that's a whole different story. But just to get to the finals would have been for that young Boston team would have been big. And it was nice to see Paul get it later on. Of course, he beat my Cavs in that run, but nice to see him get it later on and all those guys. But I just feel those young Boston teams had a lot going on and just never got over the hump, unfortunately. So it's good to hear that backstory. Right. I never really knew that about Tony Delk and that whole situation. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Now,
it was good.
Now, I want to tell another guy I want to talk about is Reggie Miller. I know you play with the Pacers and you play with a young Ron Artest, Jermaine O'Neal, and Jamal Tinsley, all those boys. And again, another team that had some nice runs, never quite got over the hump. Obviously, the Malice and the Palace kind of derailed some of that. That was just